Welcome back, Focus Learners. Today, we are tackling a highly requested topic. A lot of you have been reaching out asking us to give a report on failures and patterns in Shasta County. And well, that is exactly what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to unpack the systemic patterns, the constitutional risks, and quite frankly, the bureaucratic collapse currently unfolding in Shasta County government. And we're doing this based entirely on a mountain of official documents. We're talking state audits, controller reports, federal court dockets, and civil grand jury investigations. So no rumors or opinions today. We are looking strictly at the verified administrative paper trail of an institution in deep distress. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the multi-million-dollar crisis, lethal failures in custody, the justice system breakdown, brain drain and attrition, and finally, a pattern of risk. Let's jump right in. Section 1. The multi-million-dollar crisis, measuring the toll. Before we even get into the structural failures, we have to talk about the explosive financial symptoms of this crisis. The cost? It's a staggering $25,050,000. This represents the total documented public settlements paid out by the county for civil rights violations from the early 2000s stretching into 2026. This absolute financial hemorrhage is largely driven by Section 1983 civil rights claims, so lawsuits involving excessive force, deliberate indifference to serious medical needs, and wrongful death. When a local government fails to manage its internal risk, it ultimately pays the price in these catastrophic, multi-million-dollar legal settlements. Basically, taxpayer dollars end up paying for a lack of risk management. I just want to pause for a second and really ground us here. The failures we are discussing today are highly verified facts pulled straight from official government records, state audits, and court judgments. When we talk about millions in settlements, these are actual taxpayer dollars, meticulously documented in public ledgers. That brings us to Section 2, lethal failures in custody, the jail epicenter. We really have to focus on the county jail because this facility is the absolute epicenter of the county's litigation history. The findings from the 2024 to 2025 civil grand jury reveal a pretty grim reality. Shasta's jail mortality rate drastically eclipses the mathematically expected state average. While peer facilities might expect less than one death a year, 0.87 to be exact, Shasta averages 3.7. In fact, the grand jury found that in 5 of the 6 most recent years reviewed, Shasta County had more annual jail deaths than comparison counties and state averages. And when you lay this out on a timeline, the acceleration of this crisis is undeniable. Let's trace it. In August 2023, the county and its medical contractor, WellPath, reached a massive $12.75 million settlement after the overdose death of Randall Johnson. But the crisis didn't stop there. Between late 2023 and 2024, a cluster of 5 deaths occurred in just a 13-month window. That prompted a highly critical grand jury report in May of 2024. Ultimately, the liability became so unignorable that the county was forced to completely cut ties with WellPath, signing a new $25 million contract with a replacement provider, Medico, in March 2026. They had to pay a massive premium just to try and stabilize the facility. The lawsuits tied to these deaths, cases like Adina, DePay, and Johnson, reveal some deeply troubling details. Federal complaints cite the falsification of medical intake records. They note the county was using under-credentialed licensed vocational nurses operating outside their legal scope instead of registered nurses. In the Adina case, deputies were actually accused of placing magnets over cell windows to completely bypass surveillance cameras while using force. And we see a repeated misuse of safety cells for inmates experiencing life-threatening medical crises. You know, these details show us that the root causes are structural. This isn't just random bad luck. We are looking at systemic, deliberate indifference. Moving on to Section 3, the justice system breakdown, a system paralyzed. The exact same pattern of under-resourcing we just saw at the jail is paralyzing the county's courts and prosecutors. The core issue? A massive staffing gap. By 2025, the district attorney's office was funded for 28 prosecutor positions, but due to severe attrition, they only had 16 filled. That is a 40% vacancy rate. When an office is operating at barely over half capacity, the entire system buckles. Because of this, the DA has been forced to dismiss or reject roughly half of the 11,700 cases submitted by local police. They literally just do not have the manpower to process them. So why is this brain drain happening? Well, it boils down to simple math. The starting salary for a prosecutor in rural Shasta County has hovered around $86,000. But if that same attorney drives down to Sacramento County, they start at $131,000. Departing attorneys have cited severe burnout and better pay in neighboring counties. This chronic austerity, meaning the refusal to fund competitive salaries, directly results in an inability to enforce the law. Local cases simply go unprosecuted.
And the consequences of starving the system of resources are very real. Take the Brett Epps case in 2024. This was a serious attempted murder prosecution, and it was dismissed entirely, not just once, but twice. Why? Because the Superior Court had missing judges, unfunded judicial positions, and a completely flooded courthouse. When there is no judge available to hear a case before the legal clock runs out, the case gets thrown out entirely. It is a bureaucratic nightmare where justice is denied simply because there aren't enough chairs at the bench.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, brain drain and attrition, hollowed out leadership.
We also have to look at how ideological polarization has accelerated the loss of institutional memory across the board. The documentary evidence shows profound administrative volatility. In the Elections Department, investigations revealed a toxic workplace, and attempts to bypass state election laws resulted in a direct writ of mandate lawsuit from the California Attorney General over Measure B. In the executive branch, forced exits of health officers, the CEO, and an assistant CEO have led to multi-million-dollar wrongful termination lawsuits alleging retaliation. And in the DA's office, outside investigators actually confirmed ethical violations regarding campaigning on county time. The records point to a governance structure deeply destabilized by forced exits and ideological disputes. The veteran leadership has just been hollowed out. Finally, we reach Section 5, a pattern of risk, the cascade effect.
It's time to step back and connect the dots. The crucial point here is that these failures are not isolated incidents. They are incredibly predictable failure loops. It always starts with severe fiscal austerity, suppressing wages and deferring maintenance. That directly causes chronic understaffing, exactly like we saw with the 40% vacancy in the DA's office. Understaffing inevitably leads to corner cutting and constitutional violations, like the lethal conditions inside the jail. And finally, those violations end up costing the taxpayers millions in catastrophic lawsuit settlements, like the $12 million Barbosa excessive force case. It is a true cascade effect.
And we know all of this because outside oversight bodies have been constantly sounding the alarm, from state controllers identifying misallocated property tax revenues, to independent auditors flagging internal control failures, to the civil grand jury literally pleading for jail reform. The oversight mechanisms are functioning. They are documenting the deviations from statutory standards. But the county's internal response has historically been entirely reactive rather than preventative. So to summarize our analysis of the last 25 years, we see four massive recurring themes. First, the jail is the undisputed epicenter of litigation and liability. Second, extreme administrative turnover is destroying institutional knowledge. Third, local attempts to preempt state law are inviting incredibly costly state intervention. And fourth, chronic underfunding is actively paralyzing the justice system's ability to prosecute crimes. These themes prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is a systemic, structural breakdown of local governance. Which leaves us with this final, vital question. Can local governments decouple core risk management from political theater before the system fully collapses? What we've seen in Shasta County matters to all of us because it shows just how quickly a local government can erode when basic administrative duties are overshadowed by volatility and resource starvation. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep learning, stay focused, and we'll see you next time.